Priests are often called upon in the most stressful situations to bring peace and comfort to those who are suffering, and we often forget that priests are human, the same as the rest of us, and every scary encounter is a test for them to overcome fear with their faith. However, sometimes they themselves experience things so disturbing and scary that it tests them to the limit, and sometimes haunts them for the rest of their lives. Here we'll look at 5 occasions when priests have either scared others or been so traumatized by certain events that it's affected their lives forever. Now, not all of these are paranormal in nature, but the last one is, and is extremely terrifying. Hit those lights, sit back, and enjoy. Ghostly priest. Now, this was not only scary for the priest, but his air of mystery also unsettled those around him. On August the 4th, 2013, there was a terrible car crash in New London, Missouri, that almost took the life of 19-year-old Katie Lentz when a drunk driver collided with her car, crushing it and flipping it upside down. Katie became trapped in her crushed vehicle, barely clinging onto life as emergency workers frantically tried to free her. Katie realized the situation was life-threatening and asked for someone to pray with her. It was at this point that a mysterious priest appeared out of nowhere and started praying and sprinkling oil on Katie. Shortly after, Katie was released, but the holy man credited with helping her escape was nowhere to be seen and seemed to have vanished into thin air. What was even stranger is that when photos of the crash were released, he did not appear in a single one, despite over 70 being taken. Many wondered who this unknown priest was, and his eerie presence unsettled those who were already traumatized by witnessing a young woman suffer in such horrific circumstances, with some speculating he was an angel or possibly a ghost. The story of the vanishing priest quickly went viral, but it was a further week before Reverend Patrick Dowling came forward and identified himself as the mystery Catholic priest, and Katie and her rescuers were finally able to thank him for his alleged divine intervention in saving the young woman's life. Father William Gale. Like most people, William Gale was skeptical of the concept of aliens and UFOs. That is until he had a shocking and scary experience of witnessing such phenomena with his own eyes. Father Gale was working at the Boyani mission in Papua New Guinea on the evening of June 26, 1959, when he and 38 other witnesses observed a large disc-shaped object with 4 legs underneath it, and 4 panels or portholes on the side that seemed to glow a little brighter than the rest. The object produced a shaft of blue light which shone upwards into the sky at an angle of about 45 degrees. Even more astonishing was that Gale and the other observers saw what appeared to be 4 alien figures emerge from the craft and stand on the top deck. This same UFO reappeared the next evening, this time with 2 alien figures visible, and Father Gale and the other witnesses attempted to interact with them. This is what Gale wrote in his official statement on the incident. One of the figures seemed to be standing, looking down at us, a group of about a dozen. I stretched my arm above my head and waved. To our surprise, the figure did the same. As dark was beginning to close in, I sent for a torch and directed a series of long dashes towards the UFO. The UFO apparently acknowledged by making several wavering motions back and forth. 2 smaller UFOs were also noted by Gale and other witnesses on both evenings. These remained stationary, as if guarding the mothership. After the incident, Gale returned to Australia and was able to provide an even more complete account of what he had witnessed, and most investigators found his account to be very credible. However, the Royal Australian Air Force still discounted Gale's claims, stating that although Gale could be regarded as a reliable observer, it is felt that the incident could be nothing more than a natural phenomena, coloured by past events and subconscious influences of UFO enthusiasts. During the period of the report, the weather was cloudy and unsettling with light thunderstorm. An analysis of rough bearings and angles above the horizon does suggest that at least some of the light observed were the planets Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. Light refraction, the changing position of the planet, and cloud movement would give the impression of size and rapid movement. In addition, varying cloud densities could account for the human shapes and their sudden appearance and disappearance. What is interesting about their explanation is it's very precise, considering they were not there to actually witness it, and although it possibly explains the UFO sighting, it makes no mention of the alien figures Gale claimed he interacted with. Stephen Shia. A near-death experience on October the 18th, 1985 was so profoundly scary for a young priest called Stephen Shia that it became his wake-up call to start changing his ways. Stephen was travelling back to his parish in Wichita, Kansas, when he was in a head-on collision and thrown from his car. He suffered a major head concussion, and the scalp on the right side of his head was ripped from his skull. When he arrived at hospital, doctors gave him a less than 15% chance of survival. Miraculously, he survived and returned to his parish in May 1989, and shortly after he was celebrating Mass and reading from the Gospel, the page became illuminated and moved towards him. He managed to finish the service, but when he got home, he had a flashback to a spiritual conversation he had had shortly after the incident. In the conversation, Father Shia found himself standing before the judgment of Jesus, and he was taken through his life so far and his failings as a priest. Father Shia understood what the Lord was telling him, and he knew he wasn't a good priest and was more concerned about what other priests thought of him, and his priesthood was not so much to serve Jesus, and more about winning people's admiration. At the end of his judgment from Jesus, his sentence was hell, something Shia accepted and agreed with. However, at that moment, he heard a woman say, "Son, will you please spare his life and his eternal soul?" The Lord replied, "Mother, he's been a priest for 12 years for himself and not for me. Let him reap the punishment he deserves." "But son," she said, "if we give him special graces and strengths, then let's see if he bears fruit. If not, your will be done." There was a very short pause, after which Jesus said, "Mother, he's yours." Father Shia was spared. Since supposedly staring death in the face and facing hell, Father Shia has dedicated his life to God, and in particular Mother Mary, who he credits with saving his life. Father Stephen McGraw. On the morning of September the 11th, 2001, Father Stephen McGraw was on his way to Arlington National Cemetery, Washington, for a planned graveyard service. But he took a wrong turn and ended up on the freeway, right beside the Pentagon, and as he waited in traffic, he felt his car vibrate and then heard a deafening roar as a large aircraft passed directly over the roof of his car. It was so low, it clipped an overhead sign and knocked over a light pole. Moments later, the plane struck the Pentagon, killing all 64 of its passengers and crew, and taking the lives of another 125 people on the ground. At the time, Father McGraw was unaware of the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Centers and thought he had just witnessed a terrible accident. The explosion as the plane hit the Pentagon was so loud, his car rocked and he saw 2 massive fireballs billowing from the top windows of the building. He instinctively got out of the car and raced towards the devastation, offering comfort and prayers to the stricken victims. In the aftermath of the attack, pictures emerged of Father McGraw tending to the injured. Now it's hard to believe that anyone could witness anything more terrifying than the 9/11 attacks, and Father McGraw did all he could that day in such dreadful circumstances. However, in the days that followed the attacks, it was revealed that he had been a trial attorney for the US Department of Justice for 5 years, and had only recently become a priest. As you can imagine, this revelation sparked all kinds of conspiracy theories, claiming he was a planted witness. Although in subsequent interviews he has done since, and there are quite a few, there doesn't seem to be any truth in these theories. Michael Strong. Father Michael Strong was an exorcist, but one life-threatening experience left him so disturbed and broken that death would have been preferred than to continue living with the haunted memories of what he had witnessed. The incident happened on December the 11th, 1937 in Hong Kong, China, when Father Strong was called to exorcise a young man named Thomas Wu. When he arrived, he found Thomas sitting naked in the corner of a stone house surrounded by corpses. The police also turned up as Thomas was suspected of murdering at least 5 men and 2 women and cannibalizing their bodies. But despite their presence, Michael continued with the exorcism. However, Thomas responded in an unexpected and chilling way and spoke in an unnatural growling voice, telling Father Strong to get out. He then appeared to summon a fire that quickly consumed the storehouse, and Thomas's last words were, "There is only one of us, one." Strong was barely able to escape and watched in horror through a window as Thomas burned alive. But the horror didn't stop there. As Thomas burned, Strong described what happened next. Long, quick, lashing tongues of flame were licking at Thomas's temples, neck and hair. A long succession of faces came and went, all grinning, all with Cain's thumbprints on the chin. Strong mouthed the word Cain, but a stab-like realization stopped the words in his throat, just as if someone had hissed into his inner ear. Wrong again, fool, Cain's father, the cosmic father of lies and the cosmic lord of death, from the beginning of the beginning. Strong then felt a sharp pain in his chest and suffered a heart attack and slumped to the ground. He returned to his native island but was never quite the same again, and became convinced that the evil he witnessed that night would come back for him again because he had failed in his exorcism of Thomas Wu. In the final years before his death, he was reclusive and in a state of endless waiting. It is said he didn't find peace until the final moments of his life, when as he took his dying breath, he opened his eyes, and there was no trace of the ooze and contortion that had distorted them in previous weeks. At last in death, Strong was finally able to rest. So that's 5 terrifying experiences witnessed by priests. You can turn those lights back on now, or keep them off and continue watching some of our other creepy videos. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next video.